Picture this, it's 1981, and we're in Keddie, California. It's this quiet little resort town, nestled up in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody and people felt so safe they barely ever locked their doors. But on one single night in the spring, that feeling of safety was just obliterated by a crime so unbelievably brutal it would haunt that entire region for decades to come.
So that peaceful mountain town image I just gave you, yeah, that gets shattered by these words. Those are from one of the very first police officers to walk into cabin 28. It's a chillingly direct assessment, right? What they found inside? It wasn't just a murder. No, this was a scene of pure, unrestrained psychopathic rage.
So the horror really begins on the morning of April 12th. A 14-year-old girl named Sheila Sharp, she'd been at a sleepover at a friend's house. When she came home, she opened the door, expecting to see her family, but instead, she walked into an absolute slaughter. Inside that cabin's living room were the bodies of her mom, 36-year-old Sue Sharp, her 15-year-old brother John, and his friend, 17-year-old Dana Wingate. But someone was missing, her 12-year-old sister, Tina. She wasn't at the scene. She had just vanished, adding this layer of deep, dark mystery on top of all the horror. The level of violence here was just extreme. And it was personal. The victims had been tied up and then attacked with a shocking mix of weapons. But maybe the most bizarre, the most chilling fact of this whole case was found in a back bedroom. Sheila's two younger brothers and their friend had slept through the entire thing, completely unharmed. I mean, how? How could a frenzy that violent happen without waking them up? So you've got this vicious quadruple homicide in a tiny, tight-knit community. You'd think it would be impossible for the killers to just disappear, right? Well, the answer, and this is the really frustrating part, lies in an investigation that was, for all intents and purposes, doomed from the very start. That quote? That comes from Mike Gumberg, a special investigator who reopened the case decades later, and he actually knew the victims. His assessment is just so blunt, there's no misunderstanding it. The original police work was a complete and total catastrophic failure. A soup sandwich. That pretty much says it all. And the list of mistakes is just staggering. The crime scene was contaminated almost right away. When the surviving boys told police that Tina was missing, they were basically ignored, which wasted hours that they could never get back. Instead of calling in an FBI sketch artist, they hired a local amateur. Key evidence was stored so badly it got ruined by a leak. And maybe worst of all, an anonymous tip about where to find Tina's body was literally lost in an evidence box for years. Now, here's where it gets really incredible. While the whole investigation was just floundering, the most likely suspects were living just a stone's throw away, watching all the chaos unfold from their own front porch. The focus quickly fell on two guys in the cabin right next door, cabin 26. First, you have Martin Smart, a neighbor whose wife had been telling Sue Sharp all about his abusive behavior. And then there was his friend, Beau Bobadé, a guy with known ties to organized crime who just happened to be staying with Smart that exact weekend. Okay, this right here should have cracked the whole case wide open. Just a few days after the murders, Marty Smart writes this letter to his wife, and it contains what sounds like a chillingly clear confession. I've bought it with 4 people's lives, and somehow, the original investigators completely missed it. And if that wasn't enough, years later, another confession surfaced. A counselor at a VA hospital came forward and said that Smart had admitted to everything during a therapy session. His alleged words finally gave a motive for why Tina was taken. He killed her because she saw what happened. He couldn't have a witness. So when you put all these pieces together, the motive becomes horribly clear. This wasn't a random attack. It all points to Sue Sharp being the main target. Smart was apparently furious that she was encouraging his wife to leave him. The others, her son, his friend, and her little girl, they were just tragic collateral damage, as Smart himself reportedly called them. For decades, this case just gathered dust. It really seemed like the killers had gotten away with it. But then, new technology and a very determined cold case investigator gave these victims one last shot at justice. So let's just look at how long this took. For 3 years after the murders, Tina was just missing. Then, in 1984, her skull was found, finally confirming her fate. After that, the case went completely cold for over 30 years. But then, things started happening. In 2016, a hammer, one that matched a description of one Smart said he'd lost, was pulled out of a pond, and then in 2018, the bombshell dropped.
It all came down to a single piece of evidence. One tiny piece of medical tape that was used to tie up the victims, found on the floor of cabin 28. It was one of the only things that hadn't been completely compromised by the botched investigation, and it was holding on to a 40-year-old secret.
And this is where modern forensics just becomes the hero of the story. After nearly 4 decades, investigators were able to pull a DNA profile off that one little piece of tape. And they got a hit. The profile matched a known living suspect, proving that someone who is still alive today was physically there taking part in the crime.
Now, the main suspects, Smart and Bubade, they're both long dead. They are beyond the reach of any court. But that DNA match has changed absolutely everything. The focus isn't just on the men who committed the murders anymore, it's on the people who helped them.
So the legal path forward is finally clear. While the men who swung the hammers and knives can't be put on trial, the investigation has confirmed that a handful of people were involved in everything, from the murders to the kidnapping to the cover-up. And with a living accomplice identified by their DNA, prosecutors can finally go after charges like conspiracy or being an accessory to this horrific crime.
The Keddie case is just this incredible testament to both catastrophic failure and unbelievable perseverance. It really reminds us that for the families of victims, there's no statute of limitations on murder. And it leaves all of us with a really powerful question. Sitting in evidence lockers all over the country, how many other cold cases are just like this one, waiting for one tiny piece of tape, one new scientific test to finally bring the truth into the light?